Let's learn what's inside a computer. Right here we have the school's Oculus computer. Hopefully nobody minds if I take it apart. Oh well. All right, so one of the most important parts of a computer is the CPU, the central processing unit, which is hiding underneath this big fan here because it generates a pile of heat and needs to be cooled. In some computers they're water cooled, in mine it's like a giant fan and heatsink. The CPU has multiple cores. Each core lets it do one thing at the same time. So if you have 4 cores, you can be doing 4 things at the same time, hopefully, or you can do one thing really well if it's broken into smaller tasks. It's got a speed associated with it, so the faster the speed, usually the better it works. So there's other things involved like cache and all that. Anyway, but a lot of what goes on in the computer, a lot of the calculations, a lot of the figuring out happens right here in the CPU. Immediately beside it, in these sticks right here, which hopefully nobody minds that I'm taking out. Oh, whatever, it's kind of stuck. I'll leave it in there. So you can add more. Right now we've got 2 empty RAM slots, probably 8 gigabytes of RAM. That is the short-term memory of the computer, these suckers right here. So every time the computer wants to do something, it takes forever to access the hard drive, so it loads the data it's working on into these suckers, and then it can access it quicker. It would be way slower if it was trying to access all data from the hard drive and constantly working on that. So yeah, short-term memory of the computer. They have speeds associated with it in terms of how fast they can be accessed. They also have a memory capacity, 8 gigabytes here, so that's how much data we can throw in there. And that is perfectly adequate as long as our computer doesn't need to load more than 8 gigabytes to do what it wants to do. I like having lots of RAM because it lets me have a zillion tabs open at the same time, which I like to do. All of this stuff is hooked into the motherboard. This thing in the back, everywhere, all of that is the motherboard, and that does all kinds of stuff. It connects everything. Notice it's handling the USB ports and the all this other junk is connected to the motherboard. It's got its own little display thing, so if you don't have a graphics card, you can work with that, though of course we want to use our graphics card display ports. It handles sound. It's got an onboard sound card. So it does a lot of things. It wears a lot of hats. Make sure if you're making a computer that your motherboard matches your CPU, otherwise that would suck a lot. And the only reason this computer can handle our Oculus Rift is because it has a graphics card. A graphics card is like a computer in a computer. It's got thousands of processing cores. This sucker has 4. This has thousands of less capable cores. So it can do a pile of things at once. It is perfect for certain calculating tasks, such as figuring out graphics really fast so you can display them on the screen at hopefully 30 frames per second or better. It also has a bunch of data, so it can load in the graphics data and access it super fast. The RAM built into this card is generally faster than what you find here. And yeah, it's just its own computer in a computer designed to be really good at handling graphics. It's also good for Bitcoin mining and a bunch of other calculations involving AI and stuff. So specialized computer in a computer for handling graphics. And not all computers have them, but any one worth playing a game on does. All right, and in this corner are designed by Cooler Master. It's in a box here. Hard to see much of it. In there you can notice the main on-off switch is on that. If that thing is off, the whole thing is off for sure. This is your power supply. Let's see if I can get in there. There, it's usually some box in some corner. It provides different voltage level to different parts. So notice We've got wires coming from it plugging into the graphics card. We would have wires from it. It's hard to tell because it's all wired behind the thing, but wires plugging into the motherboard, wires plugging into a port that connects to the CPU. We have wires plugging into our disk drive. We got wires plugging into our hard drive. So this provides the right voltage to all the different parts, this power supply right here. Sometimes it's called a PSU, power supply unit. So yeah, important. Make sure you get a decent one because it can screw up the operation of the others, but you don't have to go crazy on that. Because, I don't know, if you're spending like $100 or something on a power supply unit, you're probably doing pretty good as long as you're buying from a reasonable place. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, because I don't really care about CD drives or whatever, is this little sucker in here. This is a hard drive, hard disk drive. This thing, how it works is it's got a magnetic disc, like a little circle that spins around really fast, and a needle that can read and write to it in magnetic fields. And this is a normal hard drive. So you can get different types. This is kind of the standard magnetic disc. It tends to be a lot cheaper. It's way less expensive, but these days I'd really recommend SSDs. It's not as important for desktop computers, but SSDs are less prone to damage if you drop it. They also are not affected by magnets, so having a computer invincible to magnets. And their big part of them is their way faster access, so a lot of programs will run faster and your computer will boot up way faster. So if you turn it off and on a bunch, good to have an SSD. Anyway, that's our computer. Sorry I went on too long. Hope you enjoyed.